Here's what it is. It's a Friday show. It's a football Friday, as we said here on the channels at sportsbookreview.com. We're going to get right into some NFL action. 4 big wild card games on tap this week. First one, we're going to start off with Teddy. The Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans currently sitting right now. Houston favored slightly by a point at certain outlets, maybe a point and a half, depending on where you're shopping at. 48.5 as a total. Money line plus 100, minus 120. Expecting a close game. A little bit of tidbit here early. We talked about it all week long. Very important for that secondary to get healthy for the Houston Texans. Getting a little bit back for that infantry back there, Teddy, as we get Jonathan Joseph now upgraded to probable. Talk a little bit of the points here that we're going to take a look at tomorrow in the first game, Teddy, of the wild card between the Colts and the Texans.
Boy, this sure feels like the type of game that somebody's going to win by a field goal. You know what I mean? The first meeting, very tight. The second meeting, very tight. And I watched both of those games. I thought the Colts were the better team in both meetings. That being said, I don't know that certainly the Texans in the second meeting didn't play their A game. It was a flat spot, and they didn't play well. This time, I'm not expecting any type of flat spot for Houston. You say, who do you want? You want Deshaun Watson? Or you want Andrew Luck? All right, well, Luck only took 18 sacks all year. Watson took 62. Amazing. So the offensive line in front of Indy is better than the offensive line in front of Houston. Flat out, no question about it. But it's that Texans pass rush that wreaks. I mean, they've wreaked havoc all over the league this year. Fascinating game. I'm not betting it. Are you?
I don't have anything wagered on this game. I was leaning toward Indianapolis all week in this game. But sometimes, Teddy, I'm a big fan of home field advantage in the playoffs. Now, it doesn't always hold up, and one would think that, there are road teams that are going to get victories in the playoffs because the games they're going to look at here, this is the lowest number, -1. But even in the other ones, Teddy, both of them hovering under a field goal or around a field goal outside of that Chicago Bears game. If we take a look at some of the intangibles in this game, I'm a big fan of Frank Reich, and I'm not a big fan of Bill O'Brien. The one thing I do like is Deshaun Watson has the ability to make plays with his feet, but you're right, 62 sacks. Correct me if I'm wrong, Teddy. I mean, we're talking about collapsed lungs early in the year, recovering from the knee injury last year. Having said that, he looks like a darn good quarterback, and I'm not so sure if that Indianapolis pass rush is going to give him enough to overcome the offensive line for the Texans, not as good to me as the Indianapolis Colts. So I think the key game is going to come down to, can that Colts defense get pressure on Deshaun Watson enough to make him squirm in the pocket? Do you think that's the case here, Teddy?
Well, let's put it this way. If I'm going to play this game, I'm probably more likely to bet the total than I am the side. With totals down to 48, 48.5 has been bet down a little bit. And 48 is a key number when it comes to total. So don't underestimate how much that half point can mean. But I want my money on Luck, and I want my money on Watson. Bet on QB in the postseason. And I know that Luck has the postseason experience and Watson doesn't. But Watson's a special QB. We've seen that on more than one occasion this season and last year before he got hurt. I'm putting him in a different category than I am the Mitch Trubisky's or the Lamar Jacksons of the world, guys that don't have that same level of perhaps big game experience that Watson has. So I'm leaning over if I'm going to get involved. I think both of these offenses are capable of lighting up the scoreboard.
Yeah, Texans not getting a break this year. Seems like every year, at least to me, that they would play Cincinnati and the Marvin Lewis squad coming down to town. Not the case this one. Hot team coming in with Reich. So we'll have some fun with that football game. Prime time, Teddy. Prime time Saturday night here. Seattle versus Dallas. -2 currently across the board at different outlets. 43 is an over-under. Moneyline sitting at about +110, -130. If we look at this football game, to me, it's going to come down to the more physical football team that's going to win this game. You would think both teams want to crank up the running games and say, you make the first mistake first. It's going to come down to the quarterback play, who's going to handle the pressure the best. But, Teddy, to me, I think the decided advantage in this football game, for me, love the fact that Zeke got a week off. Love the fact that the key components on that offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys got some rest last week. And I can't toss it out there. Dallas is a pretty good home team, Teddy.
This year, they've been a good home team. 7-1 straight up, 5-2-1 against the number. However, when you look at the career of Jason Garrett, you say, what's his record as a home favorite? He's below 35% long-term as home chalk. So, but that long-term track record has worked in the Cowboys backers' favor this year because no one wanted to lay points with Dallas. And like we just said, 7-1 straight up, 5-2-1 ATS at home this year. there's two elements to consider in this ballgame, two key elements for me. First, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson versus Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott. There's no comparison. Carroll, 6-0. Carroll and Wilson combined, 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread in these first round playoff games. The Cowboys, what are they, 2-9, their last 11? It hasn't been pretty in the postseason under Garrett. Russell Wilson, Super Bowl winner. Dak Prescott, with the exception of last week, and even last week he overthrew Cooper a couple of times. Prescott's not Russell Wilson yet, not even close. So you have the better coach and the better quarterback catching points. Always interested in that. All that being said, Cowboys home field is real, all right? And Dallas, as you mentioned, healthy, and they can run the football. Seattle's defense did not stop the run this year. Didn't happen at any stage. Seahawks, much weaker schedule than the Cowboys. The strength of schedule disparity points towards Dallas. They faced the tougher slate. And in a game where the straight-up winner likely to cover the point spread, when I grade out the personnel, I think Dallas is the better of these two teams. So you can make a legit case for Seattle. You make a legit case for Dallas. In my opinion, I'm not betting against the team that I consider to be the better squad overall. That's the Cowboys, even with that coach/QB disadvantage.
I would agree. And also that home field advantage that you get from Seattle. I mean, if you've ever played sports or been in that type of environment, especially in football, when you're snapping the ball and the play clock's running down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can't hear the signals. It's that loud. You lose that advantage on the road, so you lose that extra step that you get off the defensive line. We'll see how that plays into it. But an intriguing game nonetheless. Let's move on to the Sunday card, Teddy. Los Angeles Chargers going to invade Baltimore here. If we saw just a couple weeks back, very impressive display by those Baltimore Ravens on a short work week, flying out west, taking care of the Chargers in a must-win game for the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, we're in the playoffs, so this also will be a must-win game as well. Current line opened up at -3, 41.5. Money line, Teddy, +125, -145 split. Lamar Jackson seemingly answering the bell week after week after week, throwing for 120, 130, 140 yards. Battle-tested Phillip Rivers coming to town on Saturday. What can we anticipate from this game, Teddy?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating contest because it is that short turnaround second meeting against Lamar Jackson. And we remember, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman Trophy as a sophomore. At the time, he was the youngest Heisman winner of all time. He went back to Louisville for his junior year, and his stats weren't as good. Why? Teams had seen him once before. They had, his stats were still good. Louisville was still good. They weren't unbeatable the way they were or the year that Jackson won the Heisman. His numbers were down. Teams had seen him. So here's the Chargers. And a couple weeks ago, look, it was a major flat spot. They were coming off that big win at KC. They did not play well. Penalties, turnovers. They turned the ball over in the first play of the game. Phillip Rivers were talking about it afterwards. We're a lot better offensively than the team you saw today. And he also mentioned after the game, we might get a chance to face him in a couple of weeks, which is, by the way, this week. So you have a defense that's seen Lamar Jackson before. Lamar Jackson has not faced an adverse situation yet. He hasn't had to rally his team from behind. We haven't seen him have to carry the offense with his passing game. And we have Phillip Rivers, playoff veteran, proven performer in January, against a guy who's never played a playoff game before. I can only look at LA plus the points. I understand Baltimore's defense. I understand they beat him a couple of weeks ago. That was then. This is now. It's not like a team has never in the history of the NFL lost a game at home and then faced their same opponent on the road a couple of weeks later and beaten them up. Happens all the time in divisional matchups. I think the Chargers, very live, even with John Harbaugh's 6-0 straight up, 6-0 ATS mark in the opening round of the postseason. Well, many of those are road games. This one, I think the Ravens are going to be tested in a way they're not going to be able to handle. Chargers are past for this better.
How about this, Teddy? Chargers 7-1 on the road, both straight up and against the spread. Always an interesting number to take a look at, but I always joke about, they really had 16 away games the way they're treated in Carson, where most of the time the road team getting equal support, if not more support than the home team. Sunday, the final game of Wild Card Weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Chicago Bears meet up at Soldier Field, -6.5 now showing up on the board here, Teddy. So some movement in that game as well. 41, some decent weather expected for Chicago in January, somewhere around a 40-degree temperature, about 10 miles an hour wind. Money line plus 220, minus 260 splits here. Key injury information, Teddy, heading into this game. Wide receivers getting a little bit healthier there for the Chicago Bears. Taylor Gabriel, Allen Robinson, and Anthony Miller, all probable to head into this football game. They're my Eagles. I want them to win. But I look at that Bears home schedule that they have played this year and have been absolutely dominant. But the Philadelphia Eagles haven't been that bad of a road team, pretty much hanging in just about every game outside of that shellacking by the New Orleans Saints. Bears, Eagles, Teddy, 4 o'clock Sunday. Talk about it.
It's hard for me to get that Saints game out of my mind. You know,
Ooh,
that was a game that was over in the first quarter, and you don't see a lot of NFL games with a playoff team that is over in the first quarter. But it does, can and does happen on occasion. That being said, Mitch Trubisky as a favorite, and I mean, he has Gabriel healthy, he has Robinson healthy, he has Miller healthy. 3 big questions for this week. But with those 3 guys healthy, Trubisky's got a fighting chance. You know, the strength of the Eagles defense, as you know, is their defensive front. And you have a weak quarterback facing a strong defensive front. He's better be able to get the ball out quickly, having a healthy receiving core, a big difference maker for Chicago. That's why the money is coming in on the Bears. Now, you say Philly was last year's team, Chicago's this year's team. There's some truth to that. There's also some truth to the fact that Nick Foles, Doug Peterson, a pretty good postseason track record. Mr. Trubisky and Matt Nagy, not so much. And, of course, the team with the track record catching points in this one. I'm not laying with the Bears. I'll put it that way. I do not trust Chicago on the level where I want to lay a touchdown with them with an offense that is a little bit balky at times and an Eagles pass rush that has been downright dominant at times this season.
I'll go with the Eagles plus 6. If you're going to give me 6.5 in this football game, I'll lean on that because I can see a lower scoring battle there, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles will be in it all the way through. The tough part's going to be is what's Mr. Trubisky going to bring to the table today? Rookie, so to say, in the playoffs.